My son called me on a Thursday afternoon to tell me not to come to his medical school graduation. The graduation I had been paying for over the last 4 years, $62,000 in student loans that had my name on them, not his. He said it casually, the way he says most things he knows will hurt me. "Mom, I just think it might be better if you weren't there. Dr. Hargrove is going to be there, and some of the attending physicians from the residency program, and I think it would be complicated." I asked him what complicated meant. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "You know how you are, Mom. You'd be uncomfortable. It's a formal event." I know how I am. I drive a semi, have for 31 years. Long-haul freight, mostly Midwest to Southeast. Sometimes out to the coast. I am 63 years old and I have 340,000 miles behind me and not one accident on my record, and a CDL I renewed last spring. I am not a woman who is uncomfortable at formal events. I am a woman other people are uncomfortable about at formal events, and my son had finally decided to say so out loud. I didn't yell. I never yell on the phone. You can't afford to yell when you spend half your life on a radio with dispatchers who have bad days. I just said, "I see, let me think on that." And I hung up. Then I sat in the parking lot of the Flying J off I-65 for about 20 minutes with my hands on the steering wheel and thought about the loan agreement sitting in the accordion folder in my bunk. Welcome to Brave Mom Stories. I'm Nora Tillman. I'm 63 years old, and I have driven over 3 million miles in my life. I raised my son alone after his father left when the boy was 7, and I did it from the cab of a Kenworth because that was the work that paid enough to matter. I want to tell you about the week I almost let my son erase me from his own graduation, and why I'm grateful every day that I didn't. Before I tell you the rest, I need you to understand who my son is, because I love him, and because this story only makes sense if you know both things at once. My son, Caleb, is brilliant. I don't say that because I'm his mother, though I am that. I say it because it is a documented, measurable fact. He got a 391 at Indiana University. He was accepted to 4 medical schools. He matched into a competitive internal medicine residency at a hospital in Nashville that gets more applications than it takes in a year. He is going to be a physician who helps people, and there is no version of my life where I am not proud of that. What I am also is the woman who made it possible. Not in the way mothers sometimes say it, a little wistful, taking credit for what was really just proximity. I mean, I wrote the checks. Every semester, every year, for 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of medical school. The money that came out of a loan account with Nora Tillman as the borrower found its way into his tuition. His rent in a 1-bedroom near campus, his books, his board exam fees, his interview suits when he was applying for residency. 8 years total, $62,000, give or take, that I will be paying back until I'm 71 if I stay on schedule. I want to be clear about something. I did not give him that money because I expected anything back. I gave it to him because he was my kid. And he had a gift, and I had a way to help him use it, and that is what parents do when they can. I drove nights to cover the interest payments. I skipped a transmission replacement on my personal truck for 8 months. I ate a lot of peanut butter in a lot of rest stops. None of that was a sacrifice I resented. It was the thing I chose because I loved him. What I did not agree to when I signed those loan documents was to love him quietly from a distance while he reinvented himself into someone too polished to have come from me. The drift started, honestly, somewhere in year 2 of medical school. He'd always been a little embarrassed. I noticed it in high school when I'd pick him up, and the other parents had sedans, and I had the rig, and sometimes I'd park it down the street so he didn't have to explain. I let it slide because I remembered being young and wanting to fit in, and I thought he'd grow out of it. Most kids do. He didn't exactly grow out of it. He grew up and into something else. A world that fit him better than the one he came from, and he started trying to fit into it so thoroughly that there wasn't much room for a long-haul trucker from Martinsville, Indiana. It was small things at first. He stopped mentioning what I did when he talked about his family to his classmates. I'd hear it in the way he'd describe a holiday visit. My mom came in from out of town. Not my mom drove 11 hours from Indiana. Just in from out of town, like I'd taken a flight. Then one Thanksgiving, he introduced me to his girlfriend's Emily as his mother from the Midwest, and when her father asked what I did for work, Caleb jumped in before I could open my mouth and said, "She's in transportation logistics." I looked at him. He looked at his plate. Her father nodded and moved on, and I sat there understanding that my son had decided to translate me into something less embarrassing, and that I had a choice about whether to correct him or let it go. I let it go. Same reason mothers always let things go. It's his life. It's his relationship. Don't make it about you, Nora. His girlfriend was the daughter of an anesthesiologist. Nice girl. Genuinely. Clever. Funny. Polished in the way of people who have never had to think about money. Because there has always been enough of it. Her parents had a house in Brentwood, one of those neighborhoods in Nashville, where the driveways are longer than my street back home. They were kind to me the 2 times I met them, in that particular way of kind people who have decided you don't quite belong. Courteous, warm at the surface, with a soft invisible ceiling on how far in you we're allowed to get. Her mother called me Nora, dear, when she remembered my name, and referred to Caleb's residency as something the family was very proud of, with an emphasis on the family that didn't quite seem to include me. I told myself it didn't matter. I was there for Caleb, not for them. What mattered was my son becoming a doctor. The people around him, his girlfriend's family, his attendings, his program director, they didn't have to accept me. I wasn't asking to be accepted. I was asking to watch my son walk across a stage. That was the thing I hadn't understood yet. I kept thinking it was about belonging. It wasn't. It was about visibility. There's a difference. Belonging is wanting a seat at the table. Visibility is just asking not to be hidden. I wasn't looking for a place at their table. I was looking not to be put in a drawer. The graduation was at the medical school's main auditorium in Nashville. Caleb had told me about it in January. May 15th, 2 in the afternoon, tickets required because they were limited. He said he'd request my ticket. I started planning in February. I'd rerouted a load to get back through Nashville on that date. I'd put in for the day with my dispatcher, which is not a simple thing when you run long haul, but she'd worked it out. I had a hotel booked down the street, a dress I'd picked out in March, the good one I keep for the things that matter. Then came Thursday. After I sat in the Flying J parking lot for 20 minutes, I drove the rest of my route, made my deliveries, signed the paperwork, and called my freight broker to let her know I'd be in Nashville the week of the 15th, no matter what. Then I went to my bunk, and I opened the accordion folder. I want to tell you about that folder because it matters to this whole story. I've been carrying it in my rig for 6 years. It has every loan document, every cosign agreement, every disbursement record for every semester of Caleb's education. Not because I planned to use any of it as leverage. I didn't. I'm not that kind of person. I kept it because I am the kind of person who keeps documents. 31 years of contracts and broker agreements and freight invoices have taught me that the only thing that holds up when everyone stops being polite is the paperwork. What I found when I reread those documents, slowly, in a rest stop in Kentucky with a flashlight and my reading glasses, was something I'd signed 8 years ago and half forgotten. The loans were in my name. I was the primary borrower. Caleb was listed as the beneficiary of disbursement, but the debt was mine, and more importantly, and this was the part I called my loan servicer about the next morning. I had never formally transferred co-signatory rights to him. He was not a co-signer. He was a recipient. There is a legal difference, and I had never thought about it until that Thursday night. And then I thought about almost nothing else. I want to be careful here about what I am saying and what I am not. I was not going to demand the money back. It doesn't work that way, and that wasn't the point. The point was something else, something I needed to understand before I called my son back. The point was, who had the standing in this situation? Who had signed things? Whose name was on the agreement that made his education possible? Mine. All of it mine. I called my son on Saturday morning. He answered on the second ring, a little wary. He knew I'd been thinking. "I want to talk about what you said Thursday," I told him. "Mom, I didn't mean it the way. I know what you meant," I said. "I want you to tell me what you actually need from me at that graduation. Not what you want me to do, what you actually need. He was quiet. Then, I just think it would be easier. Easier for who? Another pause. For everyone. Caleb, I said, I need you to hear what you're saying. You want me to pay for your medical education and not come to the graduation. I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. He started in on something about how I was making it bigger than it was, how plenty of people's parents didn't come, how Dr. Hargrove had mentioned how important it was to make a strong first impression with the attendings, and the department head would be there, and— Stop, I said. What does any of that have to do with me sitting in an auditorium watching you receive your diploma? Silence. Is it my clothes? I asked. I asked it straight because I needed to know. Is it that I drive a truck? Is it that I don't talk the way your girlfriend's family talks? He didn't answer right away, and the not answering was the answer. All right, I said. I'm going to the graduation, Caleb. I have a hotel booked. I have a dress I bought in March. I rearranged my route to be there. I am going to sit in that auditorium, and I am going to watch you walk across that stage, and I am going to be proud of you, which is something I've been doing since you were born. If that's complicated for you, I understand. But I need you to know that I won't be making myself invisible for anyone's comfort. Not even yours. Not at this. He hung up. I won't tell you that didn't hurt, because it did. It hurt the way only your child can hurt you. Right in the place where there isn't any armor, the place you left unprotected on purpose because you thought it was safe. I sat with that hurt for a while, the way I've learned to sit with things on long drives. You don't chase it away, you just keep your hands on the wheel and let it be there. Then I called my friend Darlene. Darlene has been my closest friend for 22 years. She drove rig too, before her knees gave out, and now she runs the dispatch office for a mid-size carrier in Indianapolis. She is the kind of woman who tells you the truth at 10% higher volume than you asked for. Tell me everything, she said. I did. She was quiet for 3 seconds, which for Darlene is a very long time. Nora, she said finally, you have been co-signing for that boy's identity his whole adult life, and he just tried to cut you off the loan. I didn't have a word for it at the time, but she was right. That was exactly what he'd tried to do. Are you going? She asked. Yes. Good, she said. Wear the green dress. You look like authority in the green dress. I wore the green dress. The graduation was on a Tuesday. I want to be very clear about the timeline, because this matters. It was 3 weeks from Thursday to the ceremony, 22 days exactly, and I know because I counted every one of them. I drove into Nashville on Monday evening. I checked into the Hampton Inn 3 blocks from the medical school. I hung up the green dress. I ordered room service because I was tired, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. Caleb had not called since he hung up Saturday. His girlfriend had texted me once, a careful, composed text that I could tell had been thought through, saying she hoped I understood that Caleb was under a lot of stress with residency starting, and she was sure we could find a good solution. I read it twice and thanked her for reaching out and did not engage further, because there is no good solution to being asked not to exist. The morning of the graduation, I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I arrived early, not to cause a scene. I want to be clear about that. I arrived early because I wanted to find my seat, settle in, and be a calm, present, unremarkable person in the audience before my son walked through that door and saw me. I wasn't there to make a point. I was there to watch my kid become a doctor. I found a seat 6 rows back, center section, good sight lines to the stage. I sat down and I smoothed my green dress and I folded my hands in my lap. The thing that happened next, I did not engineer. The woman who sat down next to me introduced herself. She was a small woman with silver hair and the particular bearing of someone who has spent decades in charge of something. She told me her daughter was graduating too. We talked quietly for a few minutes, the way strangers do when they're waiting for something they've both been waiting for a long time. She asked me about my son. I told her he was going into internal medicine. She asked what I did, the way people ask when they're genuinely curious and not judging the answer in advance. I drive long-haul freight, I said. Have for 31 years. She looked at me with what I can only describe as honest admiration. My father drove, she said, 40 years. I know what that life costs." She held out her hand. "I'm the Dean of Student Affairs." I shook the Dean of Student Affairs' hand in my green dress, 6 rows back from the stage where my son was about to walk, and I thought, God does have a sense of humor. When Caleb walked across that stage, he saw me before I expected him to. He was scanning the audience the way people do when they're nervous, and his eyes found me. I was prepared for a lot of things in that moment. I was not prepared for what actually happened, which was that his face did something complicated and then settled into something I hadn't seen in a long time. It settled into relief. He found me after the ceremony. He had to look because I wasn't waiting at the spot he'd told his girlfriend's family I'd be. I was standing near the courtyard, where the dean was speaking to another family, which put me in a completely unplanned, but rather excellent position. When he walked up to me, his girlfriend was beside him, and her parents were a few steps behind, and Dr. Hargrove was not in sight. He stopped in front of me. He was in his white coat. He had the hood of his degree over his shoulders, and he looked like every single sacrifice had been worth it, and I will never as long as I live stop believing that. "You came," he said. "Of course I came," I said. He hugged me. Not a polished, for the room hug, the real kind, the kind that doesn't care who's watching. I felt him breathe out against my shoulder like he'd been holding it in since Saturday. His girlfriend's mother appeared at my elbow and said something gracious about how proud we must all be. I said I was, because I was. The dean happened to pass and stopped to say hello to me by name. I introduced her to Caleb. I watched his girlfriend's father recalibrate, the way you watch someone's face change when they realize they've been reading the room wrong. It was not something I planned. It was just a thing that happened because I had been myself in the right place at the right time, which is all I ever asked to do. The dinner that night was at a restaurant his girlfriend's family had chosen, a nice place in the Gulch, the kind with small portions and a wine list longer than the menu. I was invited, and I went. Her father asked me about my work, this time for real. I told him about long haul, about the particular arithmetic of keeping a truck moving efficiently across 1,200 miles, about what it takes to manage fuel costs and duty regulations and time windows and the sleep requirements and still come out ahead enough to pay for a medical education on the back end. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You financed all of it yourself?" "Every semester," I said. He looked at his wife. She looked at me. Something shifted in the room. Not dramatically, no confrontation, no scene, just a small, quiet recalibration of what kind of woman they were sitting across from. After dinner, Caleb walked me to my rental car. It was a warm May night, the kind Nashville does well, and he stood in the parking garage with his hands in his coat pockets and looked at his shoes for a second before looking at me. "I said something wrong on Thursday," he said. "You did," I agreed. I think I was scared," he said. "About Hargrove, about the residency, about all of it, and I took it out on the wrong person. I took it out on the safest person." He stopped. "That's not an excuse." "No," I said. "It's not." He nodded. "I'm sorry, Mom. I want to be honest with you about what that moment cost me, and I don't mean in a bitter way. I mean that apologies from your children are not simple things. They are not the end of something. They are the beginning of figuring out whether you can trust the changed version of a person you love, and I wasn't sure yet. What I was sure of was that I had something to say, and I was going to say it, because this was the one chance and I did not intend to let it pass. "Caleb," I said, "I need you to hear me, and I need you to let it land and not fix it or explain it." "Can you do that?" He nodded. "I have driven 3 million miles," I said. "I have been in every weather condition this country makes. I have backed a 48-foot trailer into a loading dock at 2 a.m. in a city I'd never been to alone, because that was the job. I have never once in 31 years asked someone to pretend I was something other than what I am. Not my dispatcher, not my broker, not a rest stop waitress. Nobody. I am not going to start for Dr. Hargrove. I am not going to start for your girlfriend's father, and I am not going to start for you." He was very still. "I financed your education," I said, "because I wanted to. Because you have a mind that should be used for something that matters, and I had a way to help you use it. That gift did not come with a condition that you'd be proud of me. I didn't give it to buy your pride. But I will tell you this. If you are ever again ashamed of where you came from, I need you to remember that where you came from drove through a lot of dark to get you to the light. And that deserves at minimum to be present when you arrive. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, I know. 2 words, but I heard everything in them. I'm going to tell you what happened with the loans, because I know you want that part of the story. I did not call the loan servicer back to do anything drastic. There was nothing drastic to do. The debt was mine and it stays mine, and that was never the point of knowing my rights. The point was knowing them. A woman who understands what she's signed, what she holds, and what she can and cannot do with it is not a woman who can be managed into disappearing. The knowledge was the power. I never needed to use it. What I did do was set up automatic payments, and I called Caleb 2 weeks after graduation and told him that when he settled into residency and earning his salary, I'd accept help with the payments if he wanted to offer it. Not demanded. Offered. He said he wanted to. We set up a transfer. He's been contributing every month since then, which is less about the money, though the money helps, and more about what it means when your child chooses to carry something with you, instead of leaving you to carry it alone. His residency started in July. He's busy in the way new doctors are busy, which is to say, I sometimes don't hear from him for 10 days, and then he calls at midnight from the hospital parking garage because he just had a hard shift and I'm the person he wants to tell about it. I take that midnight call every time. That's what the green dress was for. Not to be impressive. To be present. The people who show up get the midnight call. His girlfriend's mother sent me a card in June. A real card, handwritten. She said she'd thought a lot about the conversation at dinner, and she was sorry she hadn't taken more time earlier to know me. It was a small thing, a card. But small true things matter. I wrote back. We're not close, but we're something, which is more than we were. I met Dr. Hargrove at a department event in September that Caleb asked me to come to. Caleb introduced me himself before anyone could ask. This is my mother. She's been driving long haul for 31 years. She paid for everything. He said it easy, like it was a simple fact, which it is. Dr. Hargrove said that was remarkable. I said I appreciated that. What I didn't say but thought was, I know. I've known for 31 years. Caleb and I talk differently now. Not more often, necessarily, though maybe a little more. But differently. Straighter, like 2 people who know where the other one actually stands, which is something you can only have when someone has been honest with you in a parking garage at 11 o'clock at night after a hard conversation. He told me a few months ago that he'd told a patient's family about me. An elderly woman from a small town, scared, in for something serious, who kept apologizing for not understanding the medical language. He told her his mother drove a truck and never finished college, and she could ask him whatever she needed, and he would explain it until it made sense, because that's what his mother had done for him. The woman cried. Caleb told me about it like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was. I'm still driving. I've got maybe 4 or 5 years left before my back makes the decision for me, and I intend to use them well. I have a route I like, a rig I keep clean, a dispatcher who respects my record. I have a son who is becoming a good doctor and a man, in that order, which is the right order. And I have the accordion folder still in my bunk because you never stop needing to know where your paperwork is. People ask me sometimes if I almost let it happen, if I almost stayed home. And the honest answer is, for about 20 minutes in a Flying J parking lot in Kentucky, I almost talked myself into it. Into saying it's his day, Nora, don't make it about you. Into swallowing the thing they count on every decent parent to swallow. I didn't, and I'm glad. Not because I proved anything. Not because the dinner went well, or the dean knew my name or Hargrove was impressed. But because my son needed to see me not disappear. He needed to learn that the woman who funded his whole future was not a woman you could schedule out of your life when the circumstances got polished. He needed to see what it looks like when a person who loves you also respects herself, because someday he is going to love someone, and he needed to know what that looks like up close. I showed him. In a green dress, 6 rows back, in an auditorium in Nashville, on a Tuesday in May. That's enough. That was always going to be enough.